In the Final Fantasy series, crystals are used in most of the games as a source of powerful magic. Is it the combination of beauty, mystique, and the tangibility of the crystal that makes it so captivating? Hi, I'm Justin. This is C5 Dev, where inspiration is a chain reaction. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use Scenario GG to create some pretty rock-solid power crystals. In Scenario GG, I'm on the Images module, and I just want to show you real quick some examples of the crystals that I was able to create, and this is what will be the end result of this video. So pretty consistent and I think pretty awesome looking crystals. And we have lighter ones, darker ones, and then even circular ones. So with that, let's start from the beginning. I'm going to go to Generate Images, Public Generators, Stable Diffusion, and I'll put in the prompts that I used for this. Now, I did start with Scenario GG, and I ended up also using the Hugging Face Stable Diffusion API. And then down here, I will put in the negative prompt. A quick note before I generate some images here, some recent modifications that Scenario GG has made to the application are now you can edit and delete the prompt. So I'll just show that real quick. So I can come in here and now as my CSV, I can make changes and move things around if I want, and then hit enter, it goes back, and I can also delete, and that'll clear out the whole box. Those back in, let's generate some images. All right, so you can see we probably have one that is somewhat like what I was looking for. So it has the gray background and kind of crystal. Let's just see if we can get one that I would have included in the training set for the first generator. All right, now there we go. So I think I like that crystal. This one is pretty cool. This one is close to something that I'm interested in. And then this one is pretty neat as well. So the interesting part there is originally when I had done this and generated my first batch, I'd moved these sampling steps up to 75. You could see there for a while I was running them at 53, which is just a little bit above the default. And that wasn't quite yielding what I was expecting. So the increasing those steps did help me get closer to what I was trying to target. So that's definitely a parameter that even if it looks like the image is kind of in the design that you want, maybe you want to move that up or down a few just to see if you get some different results. You can see that I went through and had to run a lot of iterations to try to get some example of what I wanted. You can do that, but depending on how much you have to pay or how long you have to wait in order to produce those images, it might be better to mess with the prompts a little bit more, kind of like how I switched from the 50 to the 75. After generating these, then I went and downloaded a bunch of images. So for instance, I wanted this one, and I go and then click download to my workstation. From there, I then created my first generator. So we'll go back to generators and I'll show you the one that I made. So this was the first one, and here are the examples that I have. Now on these, you can see that they have a white background. So I used the Scenario GG function of actually being able to remove the background. And that's because I wanted to have more of just these gray backgrounds, and some of these weren't quite that, or they had text, or there are other elements that I wanted to remove. To get this sample set, I probably ran quite a few hundred examples, and this is what I was able to extract from it. And if we look at some of the images that it produced from that generator. Then we take a look at the training parameters. So on this one, I actually used the preset of gems in the training class, and then this was the automatic settings that came from that class. We can take a look at some of the results. And they're pretty good. They're lining up with what I had put in there for samples. Some of these I had more complex gems, and so I thought those would maybe translate a little bit better, but they didn't as much as I had hoped. Let's take a look at a second generator that I created where I started to refine and pull out some of the images that I thought wouldn't quite fit. I'll go back to generators. In this generator, I used a few more images and swapped out some of the others that I thought would be a good fit. And then I also changed it to the concept art training class. And then these are all automated. You can see that the concept art has some sort of like pre-training that kind of tweaks it a little bit further away from what I was anticipating. But it did create some crystals, and they have a pretty good look to them. I think the gems probably kept them a little bit more consistent, but I do like, in here it preserves some of those aspects from the original training set, maybe a little bit more. On this next generator, I swapped out some more images, and I also at this point started to use the Hugging Face Stable Diffusion API to start to generate some more example crystals using my workstation. I have a pretty large NVIDIA RTX graphics card, and so I use that to generate additional images as well as using ones from Scenario GG. With that, I chose the concept art class again and got some pretty good results. I do like how it's starting to establish that gray background, really kind of makes the crystals stand out a little bit more, and they're all pretty centered, so that was working pretty well. This one is a little bit farther off center, but otherwise it's looking pretty good. Some of it is blurring. It's kind of like mixing some aspects of the crystals together, so I don't get quite the same type of crystal out of it that I put in. So then I went to the next version of Crystal Generator. On this one, I started to pull in additional samples that I was getting from the Hugging Face API, as well as a few more that I was getting from Stable Diffusion. And I was just trying to swap out and get crystals that were a little bit more aligned with each other. You can see that I pulled out the gold one from before. So there was that little round gold ball type crystal. There was also a red one. So I was just trying to find a little bit better collection that kind of all looked the same. Stuck with the concept art. So let's take a look at some of the examples that created. And these are looking pretty sharp too. I like the coloring that started to happen here a little bit more. Some of it is still merging a lot of the crystal features together instead of kind of having just those training examples as more examples versus merging all the features, but they look pretty good. Then I wanted to create another version of it. Let's take a look at that. For this generator, again, I was still using the Hugging Face Stable Diffusion API to generate more images, as well as generate some additional ones from Scenario GG. And with that, I started changing some of the prompts to include dark in there, as I was getting a lot of very light crystals, which did look pretty good. I also used an additional prompt like HDR to try to get that range. So that way, either my crystal wasn't all dark or it wasn't all light. And that way I would get kind of this blend that you see here. I'm also on this one was still using the remove background on quite a few of these. And there were only a few that I kept those in. And we scroll down. Oh, I was using the concept art and the automated training steps. Scroll down a little bit. See, what was interesting with this one is that one of my training examples really started to kind of take over. So even though I ran quite a few examples of that, this spherical one started to really be dominant. So let's take a look at that one. See if we can find it here. And there it is. So this one, for some reason, is very strong in teaching the generator that this is what the ideal one looks like. You can also see by how much I scrolled that I think this one I had the maximum number of training images in there. Do not recommend that you do that. I was trying to see if that would help kind of move the generator over to using other images, but I think that may have been part of the problem of why I picked on just one as kind of like the example to use. For this generator, I took that previous generator and then just wanted to change the class, the training class. So what I did was I went in here and chose copy generator and then changed the name. And then I went down to next, went to auto, and then just changed the class. So that one was pretty simple to do that. Let's go back to the generator and take a look. All right, back in this generator using the gem training class preset. So that same crystal showed up here, but the rest of them were pretty good. I think this one was a little bit more influenced by that, but most of these are looking pretty sharp. So that preset class really kind of helps to get rid of some of that bias in my training data set. But you can see it's still kind of showing up here, and it's probably even influencing why you're seeing some of those white lines showing up on some of these crystals. But it does help in that it's kind of making it a little bit more usable. So the next generator is this redo one, and I actually don't remember what I was trying to do on that one. But the next idea I had was, what if I split the crystals into groups? That way, if they have certain characteristics, maybe that would be a little bit easier to kind of have a training generator. I need fewer images, and I kind of produce a specific type. So in that case, because I saw some of those sphere ones were really standing out, I created one that just has spheres. So let's take a look at that one. In this one, you can see I captured most of them that were just that very round shape. I still went with the concept art. You can see by the training steps that I have a lot less. Again, this is more of what I recommend, of having a smaller training set to start with and see if you're getting the qualities that you want. And from here, taking a look at some of the examples, it's a little bit easier. Still, this one really starts to shine through. So I think in future ones, I may have actually removed that because it was showing up so much, and it's kind of tough to get versions of that. Granted, this one here is showing up quite a bit too. And so it works pretty well, but the circular crystals weren't quite the shape that I was looking for. So I continued on and created groups of other generators. The next group of crystals I created were the dark crystals. We'll just take a quick look at some of those. Now I call them dark crystals, but they actually have a lot of light parts on them. But even just that they have that range from light to dark. I use concept art for that one. And taking a look at some of these, I think these were looking pretty sharp as far as the characteristics that I wanted, but some of the consistency of these weren't quite what I was hoping for, like this one or this one, even though that is close to kind of the training example, hoping to get more of just a centered crystal. There are some aspects, I think this one training item, it really kind of resonates through all of them. So not quite what I wanted, but it was still a good test to get kind of those darker crystals into one group and start to head more in the direction I wanted. Take a look at the light crystals. Some of this gets pretty tough. You know, some of these could probably be either light or dark crystals, but this is the group that I picked. I had a lot more examples of these. And again, the concept art. I think this worked out pretty well. There were a few here, started to take it away from probably what I wanted, but I really liked how a lot of the backgrounds were the common gray with a little bit of the white gradient and then the splash of the crystal on there. So as far as like centering, this worked pretty well. So I had this sphere redo. I'm not sure, again, what I did on that one. I probably will not use redo in the future because that name means nothing to me after some time. So the previous generators were using the concept art, and then I wanted to try, now that I broke those into groups, I wanted to try using the gem training set. I used that copy generator function again, and then switched out the training class. And you can see the results of this. I really do like how that gem preset training class really starts to lock everything into the center and starts to give it a pretty common look, even amongst the crystals that maybe are different shapes. So I did that for the spheres and the light ones as well, because I just wanted to see how that was working, and it works pretty well. We'll take a look at the light ones, gem training down here. And I do like the way that those look quite a bit. And you do get some variation in there. So here's like a kind of that red glow. Here's a gray glow. This crystal is a little bit more blue. This one's a little bit more green. I can probably click on those so that way you can actually see them. Those presets really do help pretty nicely if you can map it to the right one. After using those gem pre-training classes, I then created one with the dark crystals that used a custom training class. And for that one, I used the same training set. I actually created a new generator because there was a little bit of an issue of trying to copy the previous generator and then just switch that from a preset to a custom. I'm sure that'll be fixed in the future, but as the time I was using it, it wasn't working as I needed it to. So I created this new one by uploading these images and then removing the background on some of these. And then I noticed before with the same number of images, it had about a 1700 for training steps. So I wanted to move that up a little bit more because I wanted to try to lock into the training examples just a little bit more. So we can take a look at some of those examples. And I thought this worked pretty well. A lot of the crystals here are taking on a pretty similar shape. We do have some that are still in some of the training set shapes that we had from before. I like that this was heading in a range where pretty consistent across most of the output images, but yet there was enough variation to make it pretty interesting and unique across the different pieces. This one I really like. That one's pretty cool too. I did try that class as well using the illustration preset because I noticed that I had not tried that one. So I went in and gave that a go, and that works pretty well as well. I think I like my custom a little bit more than what this produced, but it was worth testing that out. And then the last generator that I used is the light crystals, and I did the custom training step on that one as well. There were more examples in this generator, so that's why the training steps are higher, to try to fit to that training set a little bit more. And you can see here, so these are looking a little bit more ghostly than the other ones. So I think what happened here is in this custom training, I probably need to increase the number of training steps a little bit more to kind of bring it a little bit closer. But in a way, I kind of like the sort of ethereal look that this is giving. So I may actually keep this pretty close to what this is returning. One part I haven't shown is that some of these images aren't going to be very centered. So you may find a crystal kind of like this one, and you want to move that a little bit more centered, or you might have one that is a little bit smaller and sits towards more of an edge or a corner. So for instance, you have these two. I may want to come in and move those more to the center if I notice that my examples are pulling close to the edge and I actually want them more centered. So what I used is GIMP, or the GNU Image Manipulation Program, and I'll show you how I select those, move those over, and then with Scenario GG, we can remove the background. So I open up GIMP, and I'm going to open up an example file and show you how I did that. All right, here's a pretty good example. So this one is off to the side a little bit, and I'd really like to move that more in the center. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I have the rectangle select tool chosen, and I'm going to draw a box around that. And it doesn't have to be great, but right about there. Then I'm going to do a Control X to copy that, or to cut that out. And then I'm going to do a Control V for pasting. And then I can double click and drag that into the center of my image. And I'll say right about there. And I'll save this as an image, which is actually an export from GIMP. Back in Scenario GG then, when I go to create a new generator, and then I want to add the image, and then I'll click accept because it's a square image. And then the part where Scenario GG helps out is because this one I needed to move. I'm actually going to click remove background. Now we have a pristine sample, and I was able to leverage that image that I created. Now again, to keep the kind of gray background that I had, you will need more examples than just the white background in order to have that. But I wanted to show you with one example. So if you have a really good crystal in this case that you wanted to keep, but it was like way off center, you can then kind of use that to move it over and then use this awesome remove background feature to fix that for you. If you liked this video or found it useful, please give me a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more videos like this in the future, and follow me on Twitter for any updates. I'll see you in the next one, and thanks for watching.